So welcome everybody. This is day 5. Yay. So to everybody that's done reset this week, yay to you. This is day 5. Yay. You made it. It's a big deal. And hopefully you have your post-reset plan with your coach. And that is unique to each person. And it's lovely you have a coach to work with. And just to let you know that there's a week break, and then the first week in October, we are doing a live Clear the Way group. That Clear the Way is a digestion detox program that kind of goes deeper into shopping lists, meal plans. In fact, as part of the Clear the Way program, you get an entire recipe book and meal planning guide. So great follow-up to Cindy's yesterday. Clear the Way is a great program, so talk to your coach. It really works well as a next step after these 5 days. So make sure you ask your coach about that. And we have a very special speaker today. First of all, Sue Ward, who is the nutritionist at Sensitivities. You've heard us speak of Sensitivities many times this week, which is a functional medicine hospital in Rosarita. Sue's mom had a stroke, and she flew to Connecticut. She's in Connecticut now. Sue lives in Rosarita, Mexico, because she works at that hospital. But she flew to Connecticut to be with her mom and her sisters. It seems like her mom is stable, which is wonderful, but she could not be with us today. And we have the beautiful Michelle Wald, who is our functional physical therapist and trained in a lot of functional medicine. So we're very fortunate, and again, how amazing that we have a team that have these amazing skills and talents to share with us. So the topic today, that was a topic that I've been asked a lot about, so I thought I'd bring into this group, is food sensitivity and weight gain. So I am going to pass it right over to you, Michelle, for the topic. Thank you again for stepping in and covering this topic for us. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be able to do it. And, Stu Ward's shoes are a bit big to fill, but I hope to do a good job for you. And we'll kind of do some overview. Some of this might be a little bit of review, but certainly, it's a big topic for a short time. So I hope to not be too complex about it, and we'll just get on.
Did you want to show your screen? Yeah. Okay, I'll do that for you. Okay, I'm going to make you a co-host. Make a co-host.
Okay.
There we go.
Like I can. Okay.
Now you should be able to. Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and play that. Okay. All right, so this is about food sensitivities and weight gain and how your GI function can impact weight gain, right? Let me see. Okay, there we go. I like to start out with, we have a whole universe inside us. Like our microbiome outnumbers our human cells. There's so much that we are discovering these days. Functional medicine is kind of a newer field, and it's a bit like the Wild West. We're discovering new things and new ways that our body is functioning. And like Karen was saying, Sensitivities was really introduced me to this whole idea. And that's not, okay, hopefully you can see most of this. So this tree kind of represents the functional medicine model. A lot of times if you look at the leaves, it's like kind of the different specialties, the branches of medicine. And really in functional medicine, we kind of really dig down deep and go to the roots, looking at immune function, inflammation, oxidative stress. And really the impact or the levers that we use are our lifestyle and look at our biological systems and genetics. And one thing I'd like to say first off about genetics, we kind of know them to be like fixed things that we can't do anything about. Well, in functional medicine philosophy, really the testing reflects aspects that you can do something about, which is so beautiful, because we want to empower people to be able to take charge and shift things so that they have the benefits, right, of doing the next thing. Okay, so I don't know why my whole slide didn't show up here somehow, but it's 100% important that you are what you eat, digest, absorb, and eliminate. And all this is to set up why the food sensitivities are important. So I'm just giving you background. So when digestion is working right, we really, we have this beautiful function that starts in the mouth, right? We start to chew our foods, and you have some enzymes and stuff that begin to work in the mouth. And in fact, you know, when you look at food and smell food, your brain starts to trigger these digestive enzymes to start to be secreted. You know, it's all along the system. There's many different enzymes that are part of this process. So chewing your food, this is like one of the hallmark things that I learned at Sensitivities. We all need to slow down and make soup out of whatever we're eating, right? We gotta mix up our food and make it into the smallest possible components before we swallow. So it says 1 minute, but I think 30 times might be more than a minute of chewing. But then the esophagus, the swallowing process, is the next phase where it goes down into your stomach. It's just a few seconds till that happens. And then it spends quite a bit of time, 2 to 4 hours in the stomach. And then 3 to 5 hours in the small intestine. So in the stomach, you have your hydrochloric acid that starts to break down the food. So if your food is well chewed, it gets around every little particle of food, and that really sets you up to have good digestion as well, right? So that it starts in the mouth, and in the stomach, more churning happens, and the hydrochloric acid is secreted. And then the small intestine, you have the pancreatic enzymes dumped in, and you have the bile from the liver added for fat digestion. And it goes through this process of moving things along the small intestine. Certain nutrients are being absorbed. And then in the colon, this spends the most time, like, it says 10 hours to several days. Well, I hope it's not several days. And if Karen has taught you the corn test, where you eat a cup of corn and see how long it takes till the corn comes out the other side, you'll have a sense of how long your transit time is. And we really want that whole process to be about 24 hours. All right, so this slide just talks about, the digestion and absorption, right? Is organized, right? It's a system. First things first, in the mouth, in the stomach, in the small intestine, and in the large intestine, where a lot of water is reabsorbed. And so that's why it's so important to drink a lot of water, because we want things moving along. And if not, our body will take it from our small intestine or whatever's in there to find, the hydration that we need. So we want to keep drinking that water, and it very much helps with the weight loss process. So the microbiome, right? We are home to good bacteria, and we work synergistically with the bacteria. And we always, in the past, we've been sort of brainwashed that, bacteria is bad. We got to be ultra clean. But unfortunately, we're discovering that's part of the problem. We're a little too clean because this natural synergy gets imbalanced if we have a lot of, like, antibiotics, for example, or, a lot of hand sanitizers. Now, during COVID, we actually kind of need those things. So we need to make sure that, we're taking the good bacteria to balance that out. So the permeable barrier in the intestines is really keeping what's inside our digestive system, which is actually outside of our body. So if you think about the whole tube is not in between our cells. And that's a really important idea to get around. When we're an embryo, we start out as a ball, and then we develop this tube in the middle, and then we become a tube as and our body forms basically around that tube. Our spinal cord is part of the inside of the tube that gets walled off into the nervous system, and then the digestive system is part of that internal barrier. But remember, it actually came from the outside of that ball, and it's really considered the outside of our body. So the external environment, and we only want the right nutrients to come through. So it's actually it's a permeable barrier. There are ways that we absorb water and different nutrients. Some things are brought in the cells and moved through into the bloodstream. But some, when this system is not working properly, then we start to have a little trouble. Okay, so there's right alongside the digestive system, there is the vascular system, right? The blood vessels, and there's also the lymphatic system, where the immune system really resides a lot of. So the immune cells hang out there, and they're always sensing for things that are not us, meaning they're for the exterior of our body, which is the interior, right, of our digestive system. And they're always looking out for the bad guys or the things that shouldn't be there. And over 70% of our entire immune system is in that area, right? So we have a lot of immune cells hanging around our digestive system as the first line of defense, right? And then, the nervous system balance. You've probably heard about the autonomic nervous system and the enteric nervous system. So the autonomic nervous system is kind of the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. When we're all stressed out, that's the sympathetic, the fight or flight. And the parasympathetic is the rest, recover, and relaxation. And having a balance in these nervous systems is super important. The enteric nervous system is that nervous system around the digestive system in our guts, okay? And it has a very deep relationship with especially the parasympathetic nervous system, because they work in concert. When one is up, the other's down. When the other's down, the other's up. So it really is about finding the balance of these systems and how it improves our function overall. All right, so this slide, I kind of zoomed in so I could show you I'm not sure if Karen already did this, but just to review, these pink blocks are the cells of the lining of the intestine. The light blue area is the inside of the lumen, or the inside of the digestive system. And you'll see those little finger-like projections, which are the villi. And that just increases the surface area so that we can absorb all the things that we need in our, for nutrients and water and whatever we need, we're drawing in right there. In between the cells, you'll notice these little red lines. Those are representing the tight junctions. And those prevent stuff that really shouldn't be going into our blood vessels, which are right below those cell membranes. And the lymphatic systems, they're like, that's where all the, that's where the nutrients get into our bloodstream, is they get diffused either actively or passively into the blood vessels, because really we're looking at like capillary level of transmission here. So those tight junctions is where usually things kind of go wrong. They thought that though initially they thought those were not very dynamic, those tight junctions, but with the discovery of zonulin, which is actually a mediator as to how tight those junctions are. I guess there's some reasons that we have yet to discover why that is a dynamic system, that you can have more permeability or less permeability depending on what is happening there. And you'll see in the light blue area, you'll see like something that kind of looks like a coronavirus, some bacteria, and it's normal to have a variety of things in there. And what's not here is really the mucous membrane that sort of covers that area. And that's usually where our microbiome lives. The mucus actually has some IgA antibodies that help, you know, signal and take care of some of the bacteria and viruses that may be coming through there. And it's also part of the signaling system. All right, so when there's imbalance of the digestive system, that's where, you know, the food sensitivities can come into play. And I'm going to use proteins as an example because proteins are one of the most common part of the proteins are one of the most common things that we become allergic to or sensitive to. Many people experience like it's a new sensitivity, right? It's like they're going along, they're just eating whatever they eat, and all of a sudden they start to have the sensitivity over time. And what happens here is proteins are normally broken down by proteases or enzymes into smaller sections. So proteins are long chains of amino acids, and they get broken down first into peptides, which are shorter chains of amino acids, and then finally into these little tiny little dots, these little particles that are the individual free amino acids, which our body actually uses, right? So when you're not digesting properly, the proteins aren't fully digested down into the free amino acids. And this, when there's too many peptides hanging around, they can actually look like foreign invaders. And if, for example, if your digestive system, this is a more expanded view, has develops leaky gut, which is kind of the breakdown of that that barrier in between the cells. You can see that arrow going down, and that's basically like the zonulin is increased and it starts to dissolve those little tight junctions. So what comes through from the inside of the gut, which is the outside of our body, it starts filtering down into the in-between places of our cells. And this triggers an immune response because our body's like, what, wait a minute, this bacteria shouldn't be here. And then, you know, the T cells and the antigen presenting cells start to look at whatever that is and saying, hey, this is not me, and starts producing antibodies. And the first process is producing cytokines, which you probably heard about in the news, which are kind of inflammatory substances that are part of the normal immune response. But when it's out of control, that's when we get really sick, whether it be in our lungs, which is happening with COVID, or in our digestive system. So, and you can see the, you know, the antigen producing cell, the T cells, they're producing some cytokines. They start signaling the B cells, and they're producing the IgG antibodies. Okay, so this is different than like if someone has a, let's say a peanut allergy, that's a different antibody. It's called IgE. And that's more of a very quick inflammatory response. So people who are allergic to, you know, peanuts or shellfish, they need to walk around with an EpiPen because it's an emergency when they get an exposure. But this is more of it's a more common immune response, and it's less strong. So we may not notice the effects of this over time, but certainly it can be a issue. All right, so there's different ways that we can look at this and find and check for leaky gut in functional medicine. And I'm getting to the weight loss part of it, I promise. I really want you to see how this all works, and then we can have some questions later if you do. So you can actually test for the IgG and IgE antibodies, which is great. Many allergists test for this, and some functional medicine practitioners also. Comprehensive stool analysis and parasitology. So this is something that sounds like, what? But really it's a very effective way of seeing what's going on, what kind of bacteria is present, if there's an imbalance, if there's an overgrowth of certain bacteria or even fungi. It can get a very clear sense of what things are showing up. And if you're, and I'll show you an example of that test in a few slides later. So you want to, it checks for zonulin and, you know, the effectiveness of your digestive functioning. DNA tests, like I said, these are like a more epigenetic or tendency of your body's ability to detoxify and metabolize. And so we can see if you're having trouble detoxifying, this leaky gut situation can be kind of overwhelm the system and actually have us the resulting holding on to the weight. So here's one example of like how the antibodies work, right? So on an elimination diet, which actually Clear the Way is a very gentle elimination diet, taking out the most inflammatory foods for a month. And you know, when you have, if you see on the left side of the screen, there's a lot of these little yellow dots. And if you have a leaky gut, meaning there's an inflammatory process in your digestive system, the zonulin starts to be released and open up those gaps, those tight junctions, and then antibodies are produced. And over time, you may have a more pronounced response and maybe not feel so great. I actually discovered this for myself in this process of inquiry around Sana Vive and more of what I've learned in my program. As it's not an immediate allergic reaction like the IgE reaction, like the hives and swelling and a histamine response. This is a little bit more sort of, you kind of feel like crud, you know, it's just like, I'm not the same. And we often align that with, oh, I'm just getting old or something like that. That's what we have been trained to believe. And that you just have to deal with not feeling good and having digestive upset because that's normal. And it's not necessarily. So over time, even when you start taking out these antigens, so the inflammatory things that are producing, helping produce the antibody reaction, the body has those antibodies hanging around for a while. So even if you're exposed to a little bit, you can have that response again. And after a time, and it's, you know, everybody's different here. So you can't say after exactly 30 days, you won't have those antibodies hanging around. Well, everybody's a little different. So you have to really see what the symptoms are. And, you know, you take out the food, the symptoms go down. And then you're like, yay, you start to eat the food again, the symptoms come back. That may be for ever. Like for me, dairy is like not good ever in my whole life. So I just take that, I've just taken that out. But over time, the antibodies can go down. And so a lot of times people can reintroduce foods that they were previously having a reaction to, which is great, right? But everybody's different. So you have to see for yourself what that is, and really getting it in touch with the symptoms makes a difference in determining that for you. Okay, so now I finally get to it. Why weight gain? So all these imbalances of the gut permeability, the microbiome imbalance, and the immune response to the foods that we may become sensitive to because of the gut permeability a lot of times, it helps, well, not helps, it's not helpful. It creates us to hold on to more water, more fluids, because we're inflamed. Like histamine is one example, that, you know, everything gets puffy, right? That's one of my symptoms that I noticed over time, and that I had a much better, like, you know, like that was not as much of an issue once I really treated my digestive system, and it made a huge difference. So if you think about, I like the analogy of a bucket with holes in it, right? And you're doing all the things to fill your bucket up, and, you know, water is draining out the bottom. If you're not plugging the holes, like in your gut, so to speak, then you're really not fully getting nutriented, because when your digestive system isn't working great, you could be, let's say, having diarrhea. That's a common symptom. Or constipation is also a common symptom. And what that does is it kind of backs up the system, and the body's always fighting to, you know, for homeostasis, the evenness, the balance, the filling of the bucket so you feel great, you have all the nutrients that you need, and then you can release the weight. And plus it's stressful. Feeling good feels great, and there's like the stress lifts off your shoulders, but the stress can be really a factor as well. And that's one of the things we really focus on in the Clear the Way program. So all diseases begins in the gut. Hippocrates said that, like, what, 2,500 years ago? So that's one of the things or reasons why we really focus on the digestive system, even though, you know, the problem may present, like the symptoms could be skin irritation. Skin is intimately connected with the gut. If you think about, we're a ball and we divide in a tube, the inner part of us is epithelial cells. So if there's a problem in the gut, there's often a problem in the skin. That's how some people express, depending on your genetics, right? All right, so common functional tests that point to the root cause, right? So here's a review of, you know, the differences between like a true food allergy and a food intolerance, or a delayed food allergy. The IgE is that sort of histamine release. You get itchy, red skin, anaphylactic shock. That's something that, you know, that's why they have the EpiPen. Swelling of mucous membranes, all that is very dangerous, and you really want to have quick action within minutes, right? So the diagnostics, they take whatever the antigen is, or the irritating factor, and they do a little pin prick. And if it swells up, gets red and all that, then you know it's more of an IgE allergy. And you can test that in a blood test. And look at that. We can use a food challenge to tell that too. So taking out the inflammatory foods can help you determine what you may be sensitive to. And over on the right side, these delayed food allergies release more of the inflammatory mediators, those cytokines that really sort of make you feel kind of and bloated and sluggish. Some people get headaches. If you look at the chronic inflammatory conditions, gastrointestinal symptoms, Crohn's disease, eczema, migraines, headaches, obesity. So that's the weight, holding on to the weight because of the inflammation. Psoriasis, joint pain is a big part of this idea, and people don't realize the connection here. And look at the onset of symptoms is hours to days, not minutes, but it could be a while. So it's hard to really put together the causal factors, right?
So you can have a blood test, IgG blood test, and they look at a food panel, and you can see, see what you're reacting to, what antibodies are present to what foods. So, and then look at that, food challenge. So what that is a elimination diet, and that's part of what we do in Clear the Way is we take out those inflammatory foods. So, and the IgG response, those are the most common, making up 75 to 80% of all antibodies, right? And they're found everywhere. And they play a key role in fighting infections from bacteria and virus. And that's part of the normal process of our body's immune system. But it's when things get in the wrong place is when we have trouble. All right, so this is an example of a food panel. I believe it's a serum panel. So it's a test where they look for the inflammatory reactions. And if you look at how many different things, oh my goodness. So this test is an example. And so you could see that, meat and poultry, not much reaction there. Fish and shellfish, they're not having a problem. Most vegetables, except for sweet potato and parsnips, which is kind of unusual. But if you look off to the right, there's ones. So a 3 would be a big reaction, and a 1 is kind of like, sort of sensitive, but not like huge. But if you look at this next one, you'll see in the grains and starches area, there's quite a few things that are part of that. And oats is a 3. So that's one of the things that someone should definitely eliminate from their diet. And, we try to recommend most things that you're having an inflammatory response from to eliminate. And then when you add it back, you add it one by one, so you know what things are you're reacting to. So this person has a lot of, egg allergy and cow's milk. And so in the dairy column is pretty high responsiveness. So, and a little bit in the wheat. So another test is, this is the comprehensive stool analysis test in parasitology. So it looks at what the microbiome is doing. Do you have enough healthy bacteria to balance out those bad guys? If you want to look at simply, in this slide actually looks at the functioning of your pancreas, elastase, and if you have like a lot of fat inside the stool, then you know that you're not really digesting fat well. If there's a lot of muscle fibers, the protein isn't being digested well. Vegetable fibers means you're not chewing so good. and the bacteria that digest your vegetable fibers there's not enough of them if you have a lot of those present. And then there's if you have a lot of carbohydrates in there, then there's more presence of that in the stool. They're not being digested. So it really gives you a good idea of what is going on. And I found that very enlightening. I was like, wow, I had no idea. So what can you do? It's actually good news. By completing Reset this week, you have begun the journey. One of the first things I think is so important to communicate is really getting a handle on the sugar, right? We want to keep the sugar even. And haven't you noticed like what that creates? You release some weight, you start sleeping better, you feel better, you keep everything going in the right direction. And really the next step is like if you feel like this, that's the end of the slide. The next step is really what we're inviting you to next, which is Clear the Way, which is a gentle detoxification program. And we have so many supportive documents and things that we're really supporting people with. And Karen's doing live calls, which is so fabulous. You feel really supported. It was designed to be done on your own online. And, now that we have these extra calls and extra support with your coaches, it's such a wonderful way to continue on, especially if you have sensitivities or if you're wondering if you do.
So that's what I have today.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm sure we have questions. Yes. Questions. I want to open it up to questions.
Yeah.
Anyone has any questions? And you're all muted. I muted everybody out. So
Oh, yeah, you can all unmute.
I had a quick question while people figure out the question. When you said delayed, you said IgE was the immediate allergy, or we call it allergy, like a peanut allergy. It's immediate, you need immediate attention.
Like,
and then a delayed allergy, I assume that was also considered a food sensitivity. A delayed allergy.
Yeah, sorry, maybe I didn't, yeah.
Interchangeably, food sensitivity. And there's so many food sensitivity tests. I saw you had the Nordic one. I always suggest people work with a practitioner versus just order these things themselves. Do you suggest, or even with leaky gut, the leaky gut tests, to make sure you find a functional practitioner to work with?
Well, yeah, because like the test is actually designed to work that way. I mean, anybody could actually order the test, but the interpretation of it is where the gold is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what you do about it is the important part.
Yes.
And so I feel like that is something that is a good idea, because, you know, you don't want to waste your money, you know, because I've talked to many people that have done that. And it's like, yeah, I got the test. And then they're like, don't know what to do. And having a guide, you know, working with a coach, working with people that have experience with this really gives you an actionable step, like what to do first, what to do second, what to do third. In fact, I was actually talking to a physician friend of mine, and she's like, oh my God, what, you know, people are, you know, just doing all kinds of stuff and not, you know, I heard it was good, you know, and that's all they know. And they don't take, you know, they don't take the correct amounts of things. They don't do things in the right order. And that's why it's kind of the Wild West on that. Dr. Google, and it can be really beneficial and worth every penny to work with a practitioner that, you know, can help guide you down the path. Because it's time sensitive, right? There's more, you need a little bit to take a little bit more time.
Janet, did you have a question? Yeah.
Yes. This was really great. Thank you so much. It was very good. Because again, you're making the point that Karen has made consistently since the day I met her, is Western medicine does not really address the issues. Like they told me, oh, you have irritable bowel syndrome. Okay, I have irritable bowel. What is irritable bowel? Oh, take something for it. Here's medicine. Rather than like what I've listened from Karen, what I've heard from you is what things can we do holistically and not, you know, just throw a pill at you. So I want to say thank you to both of you, because it gets you out of that, you know, this diagnosis they stick on you, but nobody really tells you why you have irritable bowel or you have Crohn's and diverticulitis and some of these, because I know a lot of women who deal with digestion issues. Yeah. So, and the other thing I wanted to say to you is, one thing that's always disturbed me, which you've now kind of reinforced with me, is my friends who all of a sudden, I'm going to detox. And they do these digestion detoxes, you know, for how long? And I've always said to them, why do you do this? You know, not like when we do the reset, which is we're getting rid of sugar, but they're just getting rid of everything. And there's these horrible detox programs that are out there that women seem to think that that's going to cure them, rather than, again, on a program like we have that addresses everything in a very symptomatic way and shows you answers to kind of find solutions. So that's my question.
Thank you, Janet.
Yes, and Kita.
Yes. Hi, Michelle, and hi, Dr. Karen. So Michelle, thank you. I know I've been talking about all of this with Dr. Karen, and 40 years, I've seen magical transformation with my dad. just, getting away from Western medication and actually taking this approach that you talked about, how functional medicine approaches, it's magical. He's had like chronic inflammation, intestinal problems. But, like you talked about inflammation, his pinky had been hurting for, I think, I don't know, 10 years now. But if all the doctors would come back and say, oh, some form of arthritis, you're 75 and up, live with it. But just managing his diet, getting all his, these testings, microbiome testing done, eliminating the foods that he's sensitive with, it's gone. So yeah, so I know I shared all the results, and Dr. Karen has been very kind, and I'm like, okay, this is it, So I'm such a firm believer, and everybody I talk to, I'm like, okay, please do this.
Yes, and Kita has how many? 3 now doing Clear the Way
Yes.
in October? Yeah. And of course, that's passion from your dad's results. And the truth is, I believe we all have some level of leaky gut. Just because we live in this environment, leaky gut from emotional stress, physical stress, environmental pollutions. I love how you talk about that tube, that we are, like from the outside, it's coming into that tube. And then what actually gets into our system is determined by that barrier. And when that barrier gets loose because of stress and inflammation and processed food, that's when we start to set this inflammatory reaction. And anyone with an autoimmune condition, as diagnosed, rheumatoid, all that list that Michelle had, rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's disease, eczema, psoriasis, everybody that has any kind of autoimmune diagnosis has leaky gut. I mean, it's a hand in glove thing. And do the rheumatologists or the gastrointestinal doctors work? The GIs do, but rarely does a dermatologist ask you about your gut. So they're missing a big area of potential healing.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And fortunately, there are some, I feel like the ship is gradually turning, and there's more awakening around this, but practitioners are who really takes the education to the individual. And self-diagnosing and just thinking, and there is a place for doctors. There certainly is. There's not, sometimes you just got to be like, oh nope, you need to go to the doctor. And if you're just guessing for yourself that that what's going on with you is this certain thing without really looking and investigating, that's something to consider too. There is a place for everything. And I think what Western medicine doesn't do so great is dealing with this sort of stuff. And, I think it's great that people are interested. So thank you all for coming. And
thank you, Michelle. That was so great. And now you all have the opportunity to join Clear the Way. Just talk to your coach about it, because we'd love you to keep going with us on the Clear the Way journey. So thank you so much. Everyone's saying thank you. Michelle, I really appreciate you. So thankful. Right. So that's the end of our 5-day journey. Whoa. But we're going to be doing it again the week after election. And you can join us again and refer people to this. This is such a rich experience. Or hopefully we'll see many of you on Clear the Way. So.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that this is the end of the 5 days, but for those people who wanted to continue on for 28 days, continue to work with your coach for those.
With your coach, yes, yes. Reach out for support.
It's a process that keeps going and giving.
It is a lifestyle.
It is. And I just want to say, this week of the 3 months, I loved the other months, but man, you guys knocked it out of the park this week. Michelle, Cindy, Michelle, you guys were awesome. Thank you so much. I got so much out of this week. And I'm talking to people. I just said earlier, I'm talking to people about sugar. Michelle, I'm telling them, read labels. I said it again this morning at the hospital. I said, read labels. Cindy, I went and got spices today because of you. So thank you guys so much. You guys are just were awesome this week. Thank you. And Karen, as always.
Oh, beautiful way to end. Thank you, Janet, for just edifying and thanking all of the speakers. We're just so grateful for you all. All right, everyone, have a great rest
Thanks, everybody.
of the weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.